put into it. Whatever you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. And I had students and friends that were going through flight school that would, they'd study for a little bit and then they'd kind of go fly. And then all they want to do is go fly. They don't want to learn anything on the ground. It's boring. But then when it comes time to do your written or your check ride or whatever, then that's when people usually get discouraged because then they're like, man, I don't know any of this stuff. So then they try to go and do your check rides, and then you don't pass, and then then it's more discouraging. But I think the easiest way to stay motivated is stay on top of the ground stuff, because that's the stuff that for most of us, we want to be helicopter pilots because we like to be outside and we like to be doing stuff. We don't like to sit there and read books, So if you can stay on top of that, I think that's the best way to stay motivated. But once you get behind that and then you have to try to overcome that or learn it all at the last minute, then that's when it's no fun.
Any regrets?
No. So, and one thing that I was kind of thinking of, I made the decision to do it all civilian, and it's probably another thing I probably should have cleared with the boss, but
It's an honest place.
but for the first 5 years or so, I was a pretty adamant supporter of civilian flight school over military, and I've kind of changed that a little bit recently. Not saying that you shouldn't be in civilian flight school or military is better. Not saying that either one's better, but I don't discourage the military as much as I used to. The reason was, when I started flight school, there were a lot of guys coming out of the military that only had 500 or 600 hours, and so they couldn't get jobs. So they were coming back to flight school, being instructors, trying to build their time. And it's still the case. But I think that it depends on your situation. If you come out of flight school and you have debts and you can't get a good job, and it comes down to, I'm either going to quit aviation and be an RV salesman, or I'm going to go to the military. At that point, the military is a good option, because if you're already a commercial pilot, you can sign the paper and they'll guarantee you a flight spot. So you may not get to fly what you want. You may think, oh, that'd be cool to go fly Apaches or something like that. Well, that's what my boss flies, and he has a lot more fun at this job than he does flying Apaches. It's not as much fun as it used to be, but it's a good opportunity, and it's a good job. At that point, if you've already got your ratings and they're going to guarantee you a flight spot, then that's a job. And so, you get good benefits. They'll help pay off your student loans, things like that. So I don't discourage it as much as I used to, because if that's your option for a job, it's a really good job. But, after 5 or 6 years or 8 years or whatever the requirement is, you may have to go back and, get another job as an instructor, building up time. But you're more marketable down the road. You have more experience. You have the night vision goggle time. You have some more experience that is valuable. So don't count that out if it works for you. For me, it didn't work. It's not something that I wanted to do. I thought about the military again after I finished, when I was a flight instructor, because they were offering, huge sign-up bonuses. They're like, yeah, we'll give you $50,000 plus pay back 80% of your student loan. At the time that sounded great, but I didn't want to leave my family. That was something that was more important to me. And so it's it's all something that you're gonna have to weigh. And when you're thinking about jobs and what you want to do for your career, there's a lot of different things to take into account. Is location what's the most important? Is being able to come home to your family what's the most important? Or is pay the most important? I've got 2 friends right now, a husband and wife. They're married, living in Dubai, flying out in Dubai. Both of them making $90,000 a year tax-free in Dubai, and they're happy because they're together and they don't have any kids, and they work 56 days straight, but then have 30 days off. And on that 30 days off, their company pays to fly them wherever they want to go, so they can come back to the States. They've been traveling all around the world, going on African safaris and things like that. So if pay is the most important thing and you don't care about where you live, then there's those jobs where you can make a lot of money. If being close to your family or coming home every night is something that's important to you, then there's jobs like that. If being, in Logan or somewhere in Utah is the thing that's most important, then you can get those jobs. It might take you a little bit, but you can get there. So there's different things to consider when you're thinking about jobs and what's the most important. So
I'm just curious how old you were when you started and how old you are now, because you seem way young. Have all these jobs already.
my wife doesn't agree. She thinks I'm old, but I'm 29, so I'll be 30 this year. Started when I was 22. So
Cool.
yeah.
That's where a lot of you are going to be. I mean, a lot of you are that age, or maybe a little older.
Go ahead.
How many hours you currently have?
Right now I've got about 2,600.
So then, what 500 hour mark or 1,000 increment did you grow the most as a pilot? Do you think?
It's a good question. There's a couple different marks probably that I would say. I think from that time finishing flight school and being a flight instructor to my 1,000 hours, I left at like 1,100. I probably learned the most about flying a helicopter, about how to manipulate that helicopter and make it do what you want it to do. And you guys that are instructors, you know that as your students maybe mess up some stuff, and especially if you're an instructor teaching CFI students, and you have to pretend to be the instructor or pretend to be the new student and mess up a hover auto, and then have the guy that you're teaching mess up the correction, and then you have to fix it after that. So I think you learn quite a bit about how to manipulate a helicopter. What was that?
He does all of our CFI instruction.
Yeah. So I think I learned a lot about how to fly a helicopter in that time frame. As far as decision making, definitely learned the most doing EMS so far. My boss kind of equates this job now as EMS on steroids, because we're Part 91 public use helicopter, which means we try to follow the regulations as much as possible, but we do whatever we have to do to complete the mission, kind of thing. We're not really subject to the same rules, and so now it's a good thing that I had that EMS experience to kind of build on, because we make a lot of decisions flying in weather that, as a student or as an instructor, you would never even want to be close to being in. Stuff that's below minimums, stuff like that, and just doing things, making it work, doing a skid load where you're dropping people and equipment off on a ledge, and the only thing touching is part of your skid of your helicopter. Stuff like that is stuff that I wouldn't be able to do without that EMS experience. One thing kind of bring up is everybody kind of looks up there at the EMS job as kind of like, the golden carrot, like that's what I'm going to get to. And I was the same way. My goal was always to work for Air Med, and that was my goal. That was my golden carrot. And that propelled me through, however many years, 5 years of working to try to get there. And when I got it, I was so excited. But it didn't turn out to be the job that I was anticipating. So another thing you got to look at when you're looking at what kind of job you want is how much you want to fly. So if you're somebody that just loves to go out there and just fly, like I'm just going out there to fly, then EMS might not be the best job to get right when you get 2,000 hours. And I had a lead pilot that told me that once is, be real careful before you jump into EMS if that's really the job you want. Because I was flying, as an instructor, like I said, I flew 1,000 hours in 10 months. Down at Papillon, I flew 1,000 hours in 18 months. And then I took an EMS job, and came to an abrupt halt. So I flew EMS for 3 years, and I barely got 300 hours in that 3 years. And so that for me was the hardest part about flying EMS, was not flying. I mean, I'd have months where I would go and fly 2 hours for the whole month. So there's a lot of sitting around waiting for that job. Now, it's a great career. One thing that's really good about EMS, the pay is really good. You're home every night or day, depending on your shift, but you're working out of the same base all the time. You're home. You've got great benefits. You work with great people, and there's a lot of meaning to your job. But it was really hard for me to sit around and only fly 2 hours in a month. So to me, I was like, man, that'd be a good job maybe when I'm 50 or something, because maybe by then I'll be ready to slow down a little bit. So you gotta weigh that into your decisions as well. And when I was going through it, was always, my wife, when I got this job with the Highway Patrol, she said, well, are you going to be happy staying there for 20 years? Are you going to be able to have a job for 20 years? Because up to that point, I'd never worked anywhere longer than 2 years. And so it was always about getting to the next level. As students and instructors, 1,000 hours is a golden number. That's a great number. That's awesome. But it might not be the best. It might not be the best thing. If you're an instructor and if you're flying, you're learning a lot, getting a lot of good experience at 1,000 hours. It may be better to wait a couple another 100 hours, or 200 or 300 hours before you move on. If it's not the prime hiring season at a company that you want to go to, it might be better to stay where you're at, get that experience before you move on. So think about your choices, and maybe not jump out of there, because once I hit 2,000 hours, I was gone, because I could go do EMS, but I probably would have learned more, got more experience if I would have stayed at Papillon, because I was doing so much there. I was teaching, I was doing photo flights, I was doing a lot there, to where, I could have benefited to stay. And if I would have stayed, then I would have been made the chief pilot, because after I left, then our chief pilot left too, and he told me that, I wanted to give you that job, but you left. So, there's benefits to staying, but there's definitely benefits to moving on. And you have to make the decisions and go with them. I think if you make a decision and then you want to have regrets, you're asking me if there's no regrets. I don't have any. I made some decisions that I look back on and be like, was that the best decision? I don't know, but I made them and lived with them. So.
And learn something about them.
Yeah.
This might be a personal question, but everybody's different as well. But you said you went through just no work, just went straight through school.
Mm-hmm.
How much would you need to take out to do something like that? As far as you said, you had an extra loan.
Yeah. I don't know. I've learned since I went to school that the school that I went to is very expensive. And it costs a lot of money. I don't know what your guys' prices are or anything here, but I borrowed $86,000 to go through school, and at the time I didn't think that was an exceeding exorbitant amount, because I had friends that were at $120,000 and weren't done yet. But to me, it was more important to get done and move on than to hang out. And me and my wife were talking about that on the way up here, actually, is when I went through school and was doing that, of course, that was my mindset, but that was the best option. Yeah, do that.